There's a Hebrew word, Selah. It shows up in the Psalms. And if you've read the Psalms, this is a collection of poems, some of which are very celebratory and joyful, but many of which are filled with grief, confusion, anxiety, a lot of why, God, why type of exclamations. And in this book, the Psalms, right, many of these passages, they close with this word Selah. And it's a word really to indicate a time to stop and listen, right? You've read the passage, you've taken in the emotion, and then there's a moment to just breathe and to allow for space to exist. And perhaps the past few days have been a Selah moment for you, a time not to rush in with words, but to create a space to allow the feelings to settle, to allow for the exhale. But I do want to speak into our current situation together. And I want to do so very sensitively, so I'll just give a disclaimer that, I want to do my best, and I'm up here doing my best, but if there's something that I say that is different from how you're feeling about the situation, or there's a wording that you disagree with, I just ask that you have a little grace and empathy towards me, because my intentions are just to hold space for this community. I'm a bit nervous, and when I'm nervous, I get red in the face, and I'm always red in the face on Sundays, but today I looked in the mirror and I realized I'm especially red in the face. And there are some of you that don't see me outside of Sundays, so you might just be thinking like, Jake gets a lot of sunburns, but today I really am primarily speaking to those of you who are feeling some sort of struggle, some sort of confusion, perhaps fear and anxiety, or maybe you're just feeling unsure of how to feel, and the heaviness of the moment weighs on you. If you aren't feeling any of those things, then I simply ask that you have empathy for your brothers and your sisters and your beloved others who are feeling that way today. So if you can just allow the next 20-ish minutes to hold space for them, then we thank you for that. There's something about this spiritual path, whatever that is for you, right? Whatever your version of that looks like. There's something about it where we make this commitment to ourselves to see everything that comes our way in life as an opportunity, perhaps a learning opportunity, an opportunity for growth, or even just to say that every difficult thing that I face can also inspire gratitude within me. Perhaps at some point you even begin to say that there's nothing that could ever happen in my world or the world around me that I can't shift into some sort of opportunity, right? Maybe you have even gone so far as to say that I welcome everything that comes my way as an opportunity and an invitation for growth and for healing. But this doesn't mean that we don't feel our feelings. This doesn't mean that we bypass difficult moments and hard things by just wrapping things up with a spiritual bow, right? Doesn't mean we ignore real pain and real problems. But what it can provide is the space for, as we just saw in this video, for that third thing to arise, right? For some unexpected element, right? Just creating that space in our hearts. But you might be in this room today and you might not be ready for that just yet. And I understand that. You may just feel the need to be here and to grieve or to mourn. And if that's you, I just want to say that that's a healthy response. In life, and I think as a species, we tend to fear fully feeling our feelings. Say that 5 times fast. It's a bit of a tongue twister. but I believe it to be very true. At least I know it's true in my own life. We fear fully feeling our feelings. So often we create these buffers to protect ourselves, right? Things like cynicism, maybe even sometimes anger can act as a buffer protecting us, right? Preventing us from fully feeling what we feel. Psychologist Elisabeth Kübler-Ross says that anger is really just fear, sadness, or hurt covered up by aggression. Behind all anger, there is a vulnerable heart. Some of us are angry today, but beneath that, you might just be feeling scared and sad. Some of us are feeling cynical and doubtful today, but beneath that, you might just be supremely disappointed. There's a number of reasons why we protect ourselves in this way, but I think one of them is, we have these experiences in childhood that we carry with us for the rest of our lives, right? So perhaps as a child, I think we all face some version of this. We have, some kind of difficult experience in childhood, and because of a family dynamic or because of, the reaction of a parent, it can be hard for parents to watch their child suffer, and so in not being able to create the space for that, the child learns to feel shame about the feelings that they feel, right? Because maybe you heard something like this growing up. Don't be sad, right? Don't be afraid, versus someone witnessing you in your sadness or witnessing you in your fear. And so we learn that, we take that on, and we grow up believing that it's unsafe to feel our feelings, right? So often as adults, we not only resist difficult experiences, but we resist ourselves and how we're showing up in those experiences, right? Because the act of actually feeling what we feel can be incredibly vulnerable. And how do we resist? Well, sometimes we create this barrier of cynicism, right? We just look at something and we say, this is stupid. I don't care anymore, right? We stand outside of an emotional experience, judging it, right, versus participating in the emotional experience. So maybe, this past week, maybe you're someone where in your disappointment you said, well, I just knew this was going to happen, right? Right? It's easier not to have hope than to have hope and have it dashed, right? How's that working for you? I understand this. I grew up in Los Angeles during a golden era in the LA Lakers dynasty. I grew up with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant playing together, and so I didn't know what it felt like to lose and to like a losing team. Then I moved to Seattle, and it was a whole different experience. Many ups and downs, and learning to decide that if I was believing in this team, or I'm talking about the Seahawks in particular, I have to be willing to not get cynical, right? But to let myself open up emotionally to them. And to this day, they keep getting worse as a team, but I'm more invested. But here's a challenge I want to give to you, not just for this moment, but perhaps as we move into a new future together. I challenge you to be skeptical of your cynicism. I challenge you to doubt your cynicism. It's not to say that your skepticism is always wrong, right? Your cynicism is always wrong. It's just to question whether or not that's a self-defense mechanism rising up within you. Can we put that down, even just for moments at a time? It's almost like over the past couple of months, over the past year, maybe over the past couple of years, we've all been collectively holding our breath, wondering, what am I going to feel? In the very moment that we're in now, right? We were bracing ourselves. What will I feel? And there's something very interesting about that in-between space. Olivia and I live in a house that we are fortunate enough to have a pool, but it's not a heated pool. And so something that will happen is during the off season, the winter time, we will, sometimes we make bets with each other, stupid stuff, like how many ounces do you think are in a gallon or something? And then it's like we disagree, and then it's like the winner, or the loser has to jump in the pool, right? So we try to raise the stakes, And I'm ashamed to say I've lost the majority of these bets. So I am often jumping in the pool when I don't want to be. But there's this moment when, and I should also say, we live in kind of a 50s house, and so it still has this old-fashioned diving board. It's very retro. It's great. And so there's this moment that I know pretty well where I've left the diving board, and I can see the water coming towards me, and I'm in that in-between space, right? I know it's coming, but I'm at a point of no return. And it resonates for me. It echoes of this moment, right? In some ways, or rather the moment that we've just left, right? The waiting, the unknowing, that liminal space, it's over, okay? And in some ways, there is an exhale, right? We've held our breath for so long, and in some ways, there's an exhale that we're all collectively engaging in. It might not be the exhale that you wanted, but it is nonetheless an exhale. And now, we are in the cold pool. We are in a new moment. And what I think this moment is asking of us is the same thing that every moment is asking of us, which is to surrender to it. Now, when I say surrender, I'm not encouraging you in any way to stop living from a place of values, right? I'm not saying to surrender what you believe to be love and truth and beauty and wholeness working itself out in the world, right? I'm not asking you to let go of what you value and living that out and becoming that, right? What I am simply saying is that there is a time to digest and accept reality as it's showing up in our lives and in our world and moving forward from that place. Eckhart Tolle says, whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Always work with it, not against it. Even if we just examine this as a practice, right? What would it be like to look at the present moment, no matter how difficult, accept it as if you had chosen it, right? That could even be just day-to-day challenges. Or we have Thanksgiving come up, and maybe for you, you're dreading what some of the conversations around the table may bring. Accept the present moment as if you had chosen it, just to see what that might do in you. Because I ask you this, friends, what do you think is more effective as a life strategy? To just stand at a distance and say, everything sucks and I don't care, right? Or to say, I accept reality in this moment. I accept what has happened, right? I accept what has happened says about our larger situation as a people, as a species, and I'm going to let that acceptance, that embrace of reality inform my path forward in life. Friends, denial is easy, which is why sometimes we can live entire lives in denial, avoiding what is, right? And often what we're avoiding are some of the hidden realities, right, that lurk beneath the surface, what we might call our shadow, right? And our shadow doesn't mean necessarily evil, but just that which is hard for us to acknowledge and hard for us to bring into the light, right? And in this dimension of life that so many of us have sort of been constrained to over the past couple of days, right? Really focusing on the political dimension of life, right? The political sphere. This is one of those dimensions where our collective shadow is often on display because who we put in power is just a reflection of our own being as people, our own shadow, right? And so I invite you, just for a moment, even if it's just for today, put aside the us and them mindset, right? And let's just look at the thing as a whole, right? As a whole, our system is failing, right? As a whole, there are many aspects of society that are not working, right? That are broken, that have been broken for some time, okay? The disparity of wealth on this planet, right? The widening gap between the rich and the poor. What that so often implies and means for the health of Mother Nature, right? These are big problems that have been around for some time, okay? And when we project all of this shadow onto one side, okay, we deny it within ourselves. Because if we're talking about a system that isn't working, who affirms that system? We do as its participants, right? We are all part of systems that are broken. So it's easy for us to go, oh, those people over there, they are misguided. No, we are all misguided, right? Oh, they're selfish. They're acting out of their own self-interest. No, we all have an aptitude towards selfishness and acting out of our own self-interests. Oh, they're just controlled by fear. No, we're all controlled by fear. Oh, they're afraid of change. No, we're all afraid of change. And if the system is broken, we must look at who the system is. It's all of us. And so the opportunity right now is for us to shift from saying, oh, it's those voters, it's that party, it's that president, they are the problem, and say we all have all of these things within us at all times. There was a Russian activist named Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn who stood up and protested against the Soviet Union, and for that he was imprisoned and spent his life in exile. But he said something really incredibly profound in his work. He said, if only it were all so simple, if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? So friends, when you think about all the worst things that you want to say about the people on the other side of belief as you, could those things not also be said about you? Friends, the opportunity in this moment is to accept reality and what it's showing us, including what it's showing us about our own shadow inside. And the second opportunity here, I believe, is to take back our power. Now you might be feeling very disempowered right now, and you might be wondering how I could sit up here and talk about taking back our power. But I want to talk about it in a very specific way. See, friends, I believe that our deepest and truest power as human beings is not dependent on who is in power. Friends, I believe that our power is how we move with life, not how we control life and control reality, but how we flow with it. Which is why the Tao Te Ching speaks about water as the strongest force on the planet. Right? It says water is strong because of its flexibility, right? Because its ability to occupy the low places, but it is the most powerful substance in the world. I began this series last week calling it POLITIKÁ because in the ancient Greek, the root of the word politics really is about people. It's about how we organize ourselves as a collective people. It's not about power, right? But we've turned the word politics into our relationship with authority and focused all our attention and energy on the idea of someone else having power over us. Now, friends, I'm not denying that there is such a thing as structural power that can affect real change, real suffering in the world. In no way am I denying that. But I want us to find the power that we have within ourselves. And really, I want to invite you to ask this question: how am I going to spend my spiritual, my psychological energies moving forward over these next 4 years? Right? I want to tell a parable. It's a Zen parable, and it's about this Zen master who lived in this peaceful village in the mountains, beloved by all the villagers. And in nearby villages, word was spreading that this barbarian horde was coming through and ransacking all of the nearby villages. And eventually word spread that this village was next. And so the villagers began to evacuate. And they begged the Zen master to come with them, but he refused. He decided to stay put. Calmly, he refused. And so the warriors arrived, led by a general who was known for his viciousness, his ruthlessness. And when these warriors and when this general saw the Zen master alone, remaining in this village by himself, they were aghast at how he could have stayed behind. And so the general walks up to him, and furious, he says, "Don't you know who I am? I could run you through with my sword and not even blink an eye." And the Zen master calmly looked back at him and he said, "Don't you know who I am? You could run me through with your sword and I wouldn't blink an eye." Friends, sometimes our power lies in our non-attachment. Our ability to hold on to our peace even when facing great loss. The lineage of this kind of power, you can see it even in traditions like Christianity. Father Richard Rohr, a Franciscan priest who is really a mystic embedded within the Christian tradition. Many of you have read his books, but he says something very fascinating about how this type of power is firmly within the heart of the Christian traditions. He says, "We Christians are such a strange religion. We worship this naked, bleeding loser, crucified outside the walls of Jerusalem, but we always want to be winners, powerful, and on top ourselves. At least until we learn to love the little things and the so-called little people, and that we often see they are not little at all, but better images of the soul." Friends, part of why the Jesus story is so subversive, why it was so countercultural, not only in its time but today, is because it's about standing for truth, love, and peace even in the face of loss, even in the face of overwhelming power. The Jesus story is not about aligning yourself on the side of power. It is far more a story of rising from the ashes. And to rise from the ashes, in some way or another, there needs to be ashes, right? For there to be a resurrection, we must accept the fact that there is going to be a death of sorts. And like Jesus, we can stand for and even die for the injustices that occur in the world and the suffering that occurs in the world. To very least speak out on its behalf. But today, friends, I just want to invite us to rise above and see things from a higher vantage point. Last week, we began this conversation by talking about the word apocalyptic and how this word does not mean the end of a world, right? But the end of a particular way of being in the world, the end of a cycle, the end of a phase of things. Right? And that when things seem and feel apocalyptic, perhaps it is just the birthing pains of a new age arising. And so we must ask ourselves, what is this moment? Perhaps you feel it as an apocalyptic moment. What does this moment invite? What is this new age bringing about? And as we've said, one, it's a time where we can allow our collective shadow to come into the light. Two, it's a time where we can take back our power, maybe not in the way we traditionally think about power, right? But finding that deep spiritual power. And lastly, friends, it's an opportunity to choose love over fear, which I believe is the only true battle we are ever engaged in, right? All other battles are an illusion. That is the only true conflict in reality. And you might be out there, and you might be saying, well, talk all you want about love over fear. Fear won this time around. That might be how you feel today. But I want to just ask you for a second, or even just invite you, forget about the battle between fear and love out there, right? And just focus on the battle between fear and love in here. What are you going to choose? There's an ancient Cherokee story. A grandfather is sitting with his grandson. The grandfather says to his grandson, there are two wolves inside of you. One wolf is the wolf of love, compassion, peace, joy. And the other is a wolf of fear, greed, envy, control. And the grandson asks, which wolf wins? The grandfather replies, whichever one you feed. I ask you, friends, which wolf are you going to feed? Right? When we spend too much time doom scrolling, I don't know if you know what doom scrolling is, but when you spend too much time on social media, engaged in all the voices, the cacophony of voices, right? Which wolf are you feeding then? Right? When we live in worry, which wolf are we feeding? When we look at the uncertainty that is just baked into the whole thing, and we reject that, right? We can't live in that uncertainty. Which wolf are you feeding? Or when we choose kindness, no matter what we're faced with, which wolf are you feeding then, right? When more than ever you say, I'm going to live from and stand up for my values, right? Which wolf are you feeding then? And when, despite what you look around and see in many situations, when you remind yourself that the world is a beautiful place and that life is a gift, which wolf are you feeding then? On Tuesday night, I slept weird. I don't know if anyone else felt this way, to say the least. And I woke up and my neck was super just messed up, you know. And I'm 31, so it doesn't happen all the time. But I went to take my dog for a walk on Wednesday morning, and I realized that my neck was just, I just had to walk like this. I was just walking, and I just, and then I kind of zoomed out, and I saw myself from a distance, and I realized this is kind of a picture of the situation that many of us feel that we're in right now, right? That after Tuesday night, you feel like you need to walk with your head held low. Right? Maybe that's you in this place. Friends, I want to give you permission, not only today, but moving forward, to refuse to hold your head low, right? I want to invite you to hold your head up high, right? As an act of feeding that wolf of love, of joy. Or as the author Vivian Green says, life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but learning to dance in the rain. I can't promise you that over, this next season of life that I won't have days that I won't want to give up, right? That I won't feel challenged and it may be hard for me to stand or sit on this stage. But like Arlene said, when you're up here, you get to see all of you, right? And in those days that I know I'm going to want to give up, right? Then I remember Lou, and I remember Dennis, and Tibor, and Ariana, and Bill, and Ernesto. And I remember that, pain comes in the night, but there's always joy in the morning, right? We started with a psalm, I'll end with one. And so what I want to do, right, is I asked you earlier this week to participate in a little collaborative art project with me. What I want to do right now is I want to take a minute and just focus on all of the things that bring us joy, right? The things that no matter what we face in the external world, these things that cannot be taken from us, right? That we mustn't stop prioritizing joy, right? We mustn't forget that the world is beautiful, right? That even in the darkest of nights, we can still wake up in the morning and make our coffee and see the birds at the bird feeder, right? Watch the sunrise, right? And so I asked you to provide some of your artifacts of joy, right? What keeps you going, right? And so I just want to take a minute and I want to celebrate right? Even in the midst of mourning.